Welcome to our webinar about AU Abroad. Good afternoon to our West Coast families, good evening to the East Coast, and good day to our families joining us from around the world. My name is Karen Casella, and I'm the Associate Director for Parent and Family Engagement here at American University. It is really so great to see so many of you here with us for this session tonight. Now, some of you know already that I'm a double eagle, but tonight I'm going to brag that I'm also an alum of AU Abroad. My semester in London had a profound and lasting influence on my life, and I'm really so excited that we're focused on offering more opportunities again this fall. Now, before I turn things over to my colleagues, I have just a few housekeeping items. Firstly, this session tonight is being recorded, and we are automatically going to send you a link to view it just as soon as it's available. Secondly, we're going to answer questions throughout the evening and at the end. We're going to do the live session at the end for the questions. But throughout, you can send in questions anytime just using the box through the GoToWebinar app on your screen. Now, there's more than 150 of you registered for tonight and just me behind the scenes. So families, if we don't answer every one of your questions tonight, please do feel free to follow up with any of the panelists or with me at auparent@american.edu, and we'll work to get you an answer just as soon as we can. Now, with that, families, I'm going to pop off screen and I'm going to turn this session over to my colleague, Mark Hayes, the Director of AU Abroad.
Good evening or good afternoon or wherever you may be in the world or in the US now. Whoops, excuse my technical inability there. So if I have a little problem here with my presentation going in and out, I apologize. I have too many controls on my screen right now. I am the Director of AU Abroad. I am joined here by Sara Dumont, who is Executive Director, and Matthew Verderosa, who's Director of Emergency Preparedness and Global Safety. And what we wanted to do was cover several things, since the audience we have spans parents and family members from all classes at the university. We wanted to kind of start the session by talking about the immediate, kind of what is happening right now and what's going to be happening from now until the fall semester, and what our plans are for the fall semester, as I think for many of you that's forefront on your mind. Then we're going to take a little bit of a step back, and Sarah's going to guide us through kind of how to think about study abroad more generally as we go through the phases from a first-year student to a fourth-year student, and looking at kind of 4 key criteria along the lines in terms of first kind of assessing the academic needs of the students, understanding the different types of programs we have on offer here at American University, and what's probably critically important to each of you is how we handle the finances and what the cost implications are, and then finally what exactly the requirements in the application procedure entails. So with that, we will kind of move along. So first and foremost, what you may have heard already is, unfortunately, we did have to cancel and suspend our summer 2021 programs. We are trying to be kind of forward thinking here. We saw a lot of things that were not falling into place to make it viable for us to move forward. So we did have to make the decision to suspend, and that was done this last week. But we are still moving forward with the virtual options for the summer, both through our 3 centers in Nairobi, Madrid, and Brussels, as well as virtual internship programs in Nairobi and Madrid. And students still have until April 2nd to apply for those internships, and they'll be able to still register for the courses when the registration period happens later in March. Now, taking one step forward, what's going to happen in fall and academic year? So right now, I would say we are moving forward with cautious optimism. And what that means is that we are pretty confident that we will be moving forward with study abroad in the fall semester. However, it will not look exactly like it looks during a normal semester, nor do we think every program or every country will be a viable option for students. So for example, we've just learned over the last 3 weeks that there will be no opportunities in Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, as that those countries are having serious border restrictions up to the end of the year, and our partners are not in a position to actually take students. Other parts of the world are in a much better shape, and we are much more optimistic about them. So we're taking a very kind of cautious approach at looking at it, but we probably know that it will be possible, but not everywhere. Secondly, given that, we are trying to be as flexible and give families and their students as much time to think about what their opportunities are. So most, but not all, of our applications to study abroad for next semester will be extended until April 2nd. We've pushed these back about a month to to give people more time to think about their options as we're also kind of rolling out the plans for AU for the fall semester. So there is definitely still time to apply if someone is interested in going abroad. Second, we've moved back all of our confirmation deposit deadlines to May 14th. That's the point in time where people start their kind of first confirmation to say, yes, I'm definitely going abroad. And that's a non-refundable deposit that we kind of signal that we're going to move forward. Obviously, if anything is canceled or suspended, we will refund those monies for the deposit. Finally, we're also looking at doing all the pre-departure sessions for the students in terms of the final preparations of what they need to do before they go abroad in the month of June. So at this point, we should pretty much have high confidence on what's able to happen, what's not able to happen, and then we will go into the detailed planning process to kind of move to the next stages of it. Now, obviously, we want to have a backup in place just in case something happens worldwide. As we all know now, backups are critical. So all students will be actually directed to register for courses on campus as the registration periods happen at the end of March. We will keep them in those classes for as long as possible until we are absolutely sure that we're moving forward with study abroad, and then we'll migrate them to their study abroad registration. So that kind of covers a little bit about how we're going to handle that here. But given that for a lot of you, the safety, security, and COVID precautions are probably forefront on your mind, I'm going to turn the next session over to Matt to talk about how we're actually looking at the safety, security issues, how we're assessing risk, and what we're doing to mitigate that risk. Matt?
Thank you very much, Mark. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Verderosa. I'm the Director of Global Safety for American University. We work very closely in my office with all of our traveling partners within the university, primarily AU Abroad, their staff, but we're also with other colleges within the American University realm. So what do? How do we keep the students safe? How do we ensure that we have good contact and communication with them? Well, what we do is we provide risk assessments of the current conditions and of all the destinations of our AU partners, primarily, again, study abroad. We work collaboratively to provide the best security and safety recommendations in meeting the university's goals for international travel. Well, that's lofty, and that's everyone's goal at all universities. So how do we do that? How do we actually do that? We do that in a number of ways. So in global safety, we leverage many of the information sources and engage in collaboration with the Department of State's Office of Overseas Security Advisory Council. It's part of the Bureau of Diplomatic Security. That's OSAC. We have access to embassy warnings, embassy alerts, embassy regional security officers. They provide great intelligence and great input, particularly if there's areas in countries that that we would recommend our students not travel to, or that are off limits based on the risk factors. We also look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about some of the COVID issues. This is the overall safety and security model that we use that I'm talking about right now. PULSE is an organization, it's International Safety and Security Professionals in Higher Education. These are our peers who operate other study abroad programs. We work with them on a regular basis, we share information, and we have great collaboration in terms of programs and what other institutions are doing so that we can take the best of their programs and use them at American University. We also look at our intelligence providers. We contract with World Aware and Garter World for individual destination intelligence information. We look at that and we weigh that information in combination with all the other sources of information that we have. We can also reach out to foreign governments through the embassies and local health departments. We also leverage other law enforcement officials. My background is in law enforcement. We work very closely with the State Department, and we have the ability to leverage that information. We also require our traveling students and faculty and staff, anyone who travels in university business, to register with the State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, STEP. This gives you access to embassy alerts, It also provides a conduit to contact family members in an emergency. And one of the main ways that we use to ensure our safety of our students is through an application on their smartphone. The Alert Traveler, which is part of the Teradata system, in which most of our traveling students will register with, they provide an application that allows us to get real-time information based on their itinerary, the traveler's itinerary, and their physical location based on GPS. So with that application, I am also able to communicate directly with any of the people who are registered in our system in the event of an emergency. We can also push out a check-in just to have people check in on a regular basis. But one of the most important factors is based on the GPS and your location, based on not only where you are physically located, but also where your itinerary says you should be, you will get alerts. The traveler will get alerts for that particular area. And that's very helpful when you have, you might have a natural disaster or something going on. There might be a weather-related issue, or it might be an earthquake, or it might be some other type of information that needs to be passed along, whether it's man-made or whether it's a natural occurrence. This allows us to give real-time intelligence in a given area without having to alert 1,500 travelers. So if you're in Madrid for some reason and there's a demonstration activity that could affect the center, we will push out that information. This is monitored both by the staff in global safety, but also by AU Abroad. So we have a great deal of communication that works not only with the student, but also with the center itself and the faculty and the administration that runs the program. One of the other things that we do in my office is that we coordinate issues with insurance. Now, insurance is required for health insurance is required for all of our travelers. We also have emergency travel insurance that all travelers are covered by, but in essence, it does not handle the day-to-day routine things. The emergency travel insurance it gives us the ability to transport people out of a country, to ensure they receive emergency care, to affect emergency transport and coordination with family members if necessary. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't handle the day-to-day. It'll guarantee payments. It'll make sure that you get to, if approved through the insurance company, that you have the ability to get the treatment that you need based on the factors that are involved. Now, there are a lot of exceptions. If you go to the American University's travel insurance page, registered students have access to that through their student account. There are some exceptions. You can pull up the data sheet. Now, one of the important things is, though, even though pandemics are not covered through this insurance, if you're in country and you become sick with COVID, the insurance would kick in. But it won't just simply allow us to evacuate everyone because there's a pandemic in country. So there was a lot of confusion about that early on. A lot of institutions were trying in last spring to bring students home based on the threat of the pandemic. There are exclusions, so you have to be very careful. You'd have to have your own personal health insurance, and this would kick in terms of emergency. Now, I would recommend that you should contact your own personal health insurance to make sure that you would be covered in the country that your destination country. If you're not, there are supplemental insurances that you can purchase. It's relatively cost effective, but you can shop around. I can't recommend one, but you would have to supplement what you have. Some countries require it, supplemental insurance, some don't. American University does require all registered students to obtain the health insurance, and they will have to provide proof of that. So one of the things that we also require is updated emergency information, contact information. It's really critical that we be able to contact family members, and we have a good phone number and access to our travelers, whether it's students, staff, or faculty. Now, most of the programs, most of the travelers will, if you're traveling to one of our 3 centers, we have staff on hand that will be able to coordinate all types of personal contact. It's really important if you're at a partner institution, and I think Sarah and Mark can talk a little bit about the different types of programs that we have, particularly the 3 centers that we run in Brussels, Nairobi, and Madrid. That's a little bit of an overview. We have emergency contact numbers that all of the student travelers will be given by their programs. We have the insurance information that'll be provided at our pre-travel, pre-departure orientations. And my staff's always available to help coordinate with an insurance issue or to get information about a destination in one of our programs. We've had a lot of issues over the years where we've been able to successfully contact the students, bring them back if necessary, depending on world events. In the last spring, we brought home approximately 500 students when the international travel was canceled, and it worked very effectively. And we took our lessons learned from having to bring that number of people back, and we have instituted a lot of controls and a lot of process that allows us to more smoothly take care of that. There are things on the front end that we do now that no institution was able to do before, given that this was a global pandemic. Now, I know a lot of people have a lot of concern about COVID, and honestly, it changes almost daily around the world. So we will take a much closer look as we get closer to some of the deadlines. But I just wanted to go over a little bit of the framework of how we assess risk and make recommendations with our collaborative partners so that we can show you the decision-making factors that we look at before we recommend a program to go forward in a particular destination. Again, this is a collaborative effort, and we work together so that all the decisions that are made and then recommended to the administration of the university, and therefore to the parents once programs are approved. So you have a sense of a feeling of how we came to these decisions, so you have some, so we can shed some light on it. So first thing we do is we look at the country involved, and we look at what are the factors. We rank them on a scale of 1 to 4. So some of the assessment criteria includes, vaccination and treatment availability for COVID, testing availability, the ability of healthcare and healthcare infrastructure to handle cases of COVID. Cases, are they increasing? Are they decreasing? What is the trend? What is the pattern? What is the ability and what are the requirements for visitors in a particular country for quarantine and self-isolation? Will there be border closures, or are there currently border closures? What is the flight availability for commercial aircraft to go in and out of the country? What are the U.S. CDC and Department of State rankings in terms of safety and health? What are the intel providers ranking these destinations? And is there visa availability? So these things the levels are matched to the type of traveler with business essential travel ranked differently than, joint and dual degree programs versus general undergraduate study abroad or non-credit bearing. So we rank the programs, we rank the level of the country, and then we assess it against what is the availability at our programs for different types of specific requirements. And some of the factors that we look at, what has the program done in terms of arrival quarantine planning and accommodations? What will be the living arrangements for our students? What's the capability or the facilities to accommodate social distancing? Who arranges for testing and how does the testing occur? What is the availability of medical resources and what's the plan for treatment if hospitalization is required? Can travelers isolate in the event of a stay-home order? Is there a pathway for students to complete all coursework remotely? Is travel required for the program? That's travel outside of the just being at the center of destination. Are there excursions, or is there required travel? And I think Mark and Sarah will address those issues. Other concerns, you know, if it's not a, what are the considerations for foreign national students versus U.S. entry restrictions on some foreign national students at this time? We have to look at the State Department and what the requirements are. Are there issues if there's a health concern due to a COVID risk and risk to the healthcare infrastructure? And what are the availability of treatment and COVID stressors that impact a mental health need, or the availability of treatment? These are all the things that we look at before we make a decision. We also look at the CDC and what is the level of warning or alert. Is it a 1, 2, 3, or 4, with 4 being the very highest and 1 being the lowest? Are there any travel notices for those particular areas? We look at the incidence rate, and we looked at the trajectory of the cases. We also look at the Department of State's travel advisories. Do they recommend do not travel, or travel with reservations or caution? You know, we look at all of these factors in mass. So it's not just one decision point, it's a multitude of decision points. And we also have to look at, you know, what are the travel requirements? Do you need to have a vaccination to travel to a particular country? Do you need to have a negative test to enter that country? Do you need to isolate when you're in that country? There are also countries that will not allow, that the United States will not allow, will restrict re-entry if you've been to certain countries within the last 14 days. So we all have to do some planning. We have to look at all of the issues that are involved. And I think we need to really, one of the lessons that we learned in the spring was, last spring was, do we plan appropriately? And I think with all of these factors that we assess and we look at, we can provide a recommendation based on all of these mitigation factors. And when those add up to a go decision, that's the recommendation we make. And again, we work very closely with Mark and Sarah and all of our other study abroad partners. And I know I've given you a lot of information. Again, the target is moving in terms of COVID. There are daily changes in the requirements. There are daily changes in all of the restrictions. So as we get closer, we'll make more definitive recommendations. Right now we're monitoring. We'll continue to monitor all of the COVID issues, and we will look at what the decision making is. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mark and Sarah. I hope I've tried to answer your questions before you pose them, because I know as a parent of a college student who recently graduated, I know that these factors are important to you. And again, I would want to know this information. So I hope I've been helpful in providing you with that type of information. Mark?
Thank you very much, Matt. And just to kind of recap a couple of things, and Sarah and I work very closely with Matt. Right now, we have a whole team meeting every 2 weeks to go by all the issues, country by country, program by program. And that timeline starts to get shorter and shorter as we get closer to program dates. So I kind of provided a summary here of some of the things that Matt brought up, but kind of in the final point there, about 2 months before the program start date is when we do the very final review on, is everything a go for the program? Is everything looking like it's lined up? And can we now move forward? So that's kind of our internal timeline to look on when all final decisions will be made about whether we can actually successfully and safely and securely do the programs. Now I'm going to kind of take a step back and turn it over to Sarah to kind of talk more about the overall process and kind of what study abroad means at AU. Sarah?
Thanks, guys. Really great to work with both of you. And as Mark said, we work very closely with Matt and his team. It's very much a team effort here in making sure that our students are safe in their study abroad. And that includes their academic and financial security, as well as their physical security. We're very aware that students need to graduate on time. They need to get everything they need, as well as stay safe. As all of you probably know, AU is a leader in study abroad. At least around 65% of our students will have studied abroad by the time they graduate. That number fluctuates from year to year, but it's always somewhere between 65 and 72%, which places us in the top 10 of US institutions who send their students to study abroad. We offer over 130 different programs that go in a semester or for an academic year and summer. We're very proud of the fact that we focus on providing our students with a profound living learning experience in a single different culture. That this is not travel, it's not academic tourism. Our study abroad programs are designed to provide students with a true intercultural and academic experience that can only be had if they spend significant time in another culture, interacting with people from that culture and learning as much as possible. And in terms of our students, the vast majority, over 85% of our students study abroad for at least a semester during their time at AU. Just to lay one thing to rest right at the beginning is that through our office, we don't handle faculty-led trips that go during the breaks. We don't handle things like alternative breaks, which are part of the Office of Campus Life and our non-academic experiences abroad. And there are also some specific programs that are handled through individual schools, such as the School for International Service and COGOD, that are specialized programs that they run themselves. But the majority of AU students as undergraduates study through AU Abroad on one of our over 130 programs. So mark the next slide. So this is basically how it works for most students when they study abroad. In the first year, we don't really allow students to study abroad during their first 2 semesters at AU. That's a time when they're getting used to being in college. They have to get to know AU. They have to get their academic plan in place. So while they're doing that, they should look at our website, which is full of a lot of information about all of those 130 different programs. They can attend our study abroad fair and information sessions. And through all that time, they discuss with their first year advisor their desire to study abroad and start to think about when would be the best time for them to do it, what kind of courses they'll want or need to take when they study abroad, where they might like to go, what kind of environment they want to be in, and so forth. In their second year, they then have an academic advisor within their chosen academic unit. And that's where they really start to lay out their academic plan and see how study abroad can best fit into that plan. So they discuss that with their academic advisor, and at that point, they also make an appointment to meet with an AU Abroad advisor. Ideally, at that stage, they will have some idea about where they want to study abroad and what they want to do when they go abroad. Sometimes there are so many choices that they're not really clear on that. They can certainly meet with more than one of our advisors, and there tends to be a rather constant back and forth between their academic advisor and the AU Abroad advisor and the student. We have very well developed and strong relationships with all the academic advising staff in all of the academic units. We work very closely together, and the point of that is to make sure that when students study abroad, they get everything they both need as well as want, and they stay on track for graduation, and that all of their courses that they take abroad will count towards their academic degree in the way they need it to. Finally, in their third year, it's generally when they're applying to study abroad. We normally have students apply to study abroad in the semester before the one they want to study abroad. Applying before that time is not necessary. Our programs in general are not competitive in that as long as students meet the stated requirements for the program and apply on time, they'll get a spot in the program they want. So in their third year, end of their second year, beginning of their third year, they apply for study abroad. So the first step is that they do need to assess their academic needs. This is crucial. Study abroad is about studying. It's not about traveling, although you go abroad to do it. So what they need to do is really think about their academic plan. Are they a single major, double major, doing certificates? And what courses do they need to take when? And do they need and want courses to count towards their majors and minors and other requirements? So this is where the discussion with their academic advisor is crucial. And we have a lot of information on our website. So here you can see on our website, we have a link to My Major in Study Abroad. We've worked with all the academic departments to identify what their requirements are for studying abroad. Each school or college may have its own requirements about how many courses taken abroad can count towards a major and minor. And we have also identified the most highly recommended programs abroad by major for students who are studying in those areas. There are a lot of choices, and so it is important that students take the time to look through all this material, read everything, discuss it with their families, discuss it with their advisors, and think about what's best for them, because there isn't generally a single choice for any student in terms of studying abroad. Next slide. So I just want to briefly go over the program types, because not all programs are the same. There are many different ways in which students can study abroad. In essence, there are three basic program types. One is what we would term a structured program. These are custom designed programs for American students who are studying abroad. Typically, these are separate program centers for US students who are studying abroad. It may be just AU students, or it might be students from other institutions as well. These will have a limited curriculum because these programs will be hiring local faculty to teach courses just for the program, and they're normally designed around certain themes or areas of study. So for example, we have our own 3 centers abroad, one in Brussels, one in Nairobi, and one in Madrid. All of these are centers that AU's been operating for anywhere between 17 and 35 years. They're very well established, and what it means is we have our own centers, a space abroad, a building or part of the building that we rent. We have classroom space, meeting spaces for students. We have program directors in place. We have administrative staff, and we hire our own faculty. We arrange housing for the students. We arrange academically related curriculums, co-curricular elements for the students. And also we're able to provide internship opportunities for students, because those are typically not part of a college education in many countries abroad. So typically the students will have classes with other American students, and they'll be living not usually in a college dorm, but in either a homestay or international student dormitories. And there'll be a very high level of program support, because these are programs specially designed for them. Our 3 centers have programs that are specifically designed to meet the needs of particular AU majors. So we have public health offerings in Nairobi and in Madrid. We have a program in Brussels which focuses on international relations and so forth. And so these are things that are specifically designed to meet the needs of AU students, and about 1/3 of our students study abroad at our centers. The other major way in which students study abroad is what we term direct enrollment, and often you'll hear this also referred to as exchange. This is when a US student studies abroad as a visiting student at a foreign university partner. So in other words, they basically enroll in that university as much like a local student as possible. They take regular classes, they live in that university's accommodation, whatever that is, and they live life like a regular US student, like a regular foreign student in whatever country that is. They take classes with local students, and they may or may not have many other US students around them, depending on where they go. This does require that students be quite adaptable and very independent, because although all of our university partners are evaluated for their level of support services that they can provide to international students, they are dealing with many hundreds of students, and they're just part of a regular university system in the way that our exchange students at AU become part of AU. So students need to be independent. They need to be willing to solve problems on their own, not have quite such a big degree of support. The positive aspects of it are that they'll have a much wider choice of courses that they can choose from because the whole university curriculum will be open to them, and they have opportunities to become fully immersed in local student culture in a way that is a bit more difficult for students who are on more structured programs. The third type of program kind of combines the two. And actually, our 3 centers do a job of that more or less to some extent. In other words, there'll be a program that's specially designed for US students, but it will also have a link with the local university. So perhaps the students will take 1 or 2 courses at a local university, the rest of their courses with a program. Perhaps they'll have activities with students from the local university. Perhaps they'll have some housing that they can engage in with students from the local culture. So these are sort of hybrid programs which can give students sometimes the best of both worlds. So our program in Nairobi has a link with a local Kenyan university. Our program in Madrid has links with 3 local Madrid institutions. And in Brussels, our program is actually located, our program center is located on the campus of one of the main universities in Belgium. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mark, who'll talk about the ever important money issues.
So the topic I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for is how all this gets paid for. So first, the basics. The most important thing to remember is that any financial aid that a student currently gets, whether it's a grant, whether it's a loan, whether it's federal aid, whether it's a third-party source, all of that applies while they study abroad. It's a transparent process of moving it across. The only thing that we cannot apply is federal work-study money. So first and foremost, all financial aid will be there. The other thing that's really important to remember is that when we look at the overall cost of sending someone abroad, in terms of where they're going to live, in terms of how much it's going to cost to get them there, in terms of what it's going to cost to get a visa, 66% of our programs are going to cost less than the average semester here at AU in DC. As some of you may know, DC is not the most inexpensive city. A lot of the places we do send our students the cost of living there is quite affordable. In some cases, the programs we do, the universities we work with subsidize the housing for the students. So our basic edict is that if a student can afford to be at AU, we can afford to get them abroad. We in no way want money to be an obstacle to being able students to have this experience. In some cases, we understand some destinations, there is an additional cost above and beyond what it is to be at AU. Once you add everything up, places where the cost of living is higher, where some of the transportation costs are quite high to get there. In these cases, we do have an additional scholarship fund, about $250,000 each year. Our office gives out in conjunction with financial aid to kind of look at those core places where there might be an additional cost. The monies are prioritized for students who are getting need-based aid. We're really trying to fill the gap there where there isn't an extra burden of going abroad and trying to work with each student, each family to make sure that we meet that. So we look at multiple factors to make sure that we take cost out of the equation in terms of an obstacle being able to go abroad. Now, the other thing just to kind of be aware of too, there are a few upfront costs before financial aid kicks in and before students actually get abroad. There is a $50 application fee the students pay at the point of application. There is a $500 deposit, which is basically applied to the cost of going abroad, but it does confirm the person's spot. And then depending on the situation, there's going to be visa costs, airfare costs, and possibly housing costs that have to be put up front before the students go abroad. Now, one key thing though to keep in mind, especially for financial aid, is that, as you may know, financial aid is dispersed here at AU when the semester starts. So as we get into, say, late August in the fall semester, aid is dispersed. Now, when students are going abroad, their start dates are all over the place. Some start in July, some start in August, some start in October. Unfortunately, financial aid is only available when AU starts its calendar year. So in some cases, students may have to go ahead and start their study abroad program before their aid kicks in. Now, this will not impact their tuition payments at all, but it could impact some of the housing costs and other elements that they need to pay for before that extra financial aid comes through. So we work individually with every student to make sure this is clear and to kind of put a plan forward to make sure there are no hiccups in this process. And finally, our staff puts an enormous amount of work into making sure we have very detailed budget sheets on every single one of our programs. So we look at all the key elements of what those cost elements are going to be abroad, the cost to get there, the visa cost, the daily cost for meals, and we try to give a very realistic look at what that for students to be able to budget. Now, we are obviously kind of saying these are the key things you need to do your program. We are not taking into account a lot of extra travel, certain entertainment costs, but we think in general these budgets are very conservative and are very realistic in terms of what those costs are going to be assumed. So there's a very easy way to look and kind of help build it in when you're planning for the semester abroad. So those are the key financial elements. The other thing is we just want to talk briefly now some of the basics about the requirements to get abroad and the application process. The first thing that kind of wanted to dispel a couple of myths. First, a lot of people kind of think just because English is not the official language of a certain country, I can't go there. 76% of our programs do not require previous study of the language before students go. Now, this doesn't mean they're not going to learn the language. It just means they don't need to study it before they go abroad. But they will start taking it up and learning it while they are abroad. The other thing to keep in mind is applying to study abroad is not the same as, say, applying to college or applying to graduate school. We try to be very, very transparent in terms of what the requirements are for students to meet in order to be able to get abroad. So for 99% of our programs, students will be able to go as long as they meet the minimum requirements. It is only a handful of programs that are competitive and there are limitations on who can go. But for the vast majority, if they meet the requirements, they can go. Now, the minimum requirements across the board for all students are 2.75 GPA for a semester or year-long program and 2.5 for the summer. Approval from all academic advisors, whether it's for a major or for a minor. We want to make sure students stay on path to graduate in 4 years or less if they're in a 3-year program. For most programs, students need to be at least second semester sophomores in order to be able to go abroad. Now, that's usually the earliest students can go abroad. Some universities may require them to actually be a junior status or 3rd-year status to go abroad. And finally, there can be no active conduct issues or academic probations before a student goes abroad. Now, that's the minimum across the board, but each program might have additional specific requirements. So for example, King's College in London, which is one of our more popular programs in London, the minimum GPA is a 3.3. They also require students to have completed at least 2 full years of university education before they can go abroad. So these are the types of specific requirements we talk about when we kind of say, as long as you meet those, you will get into the programs. The brochure page also provides a lot of additional information on the types of programs, which Sarah had already gone through, and the types of living situation and who the advisor is and who to contact for more information. Now, the last kind of thing to think about is I know there'll be a lot of conversations with you and your kids or your children or other family members about this process. So where we kind of get in and where we kind of think it's very important to talk about is it's really now important to have those conversations of what are the key academic and financial situations for you specifically, for your family specifically, and how can we help with that. And then what other additional resources that students might need while they're going abroad? Is there additional academic support resources they need? Are there mental health resources they need? Are there issues of student identity that there are concerns about in a specific country or specific program? These are very good questions to bring up now, and all of our advisors are well equipped to talk to kind of individualize and tailor the program specifically for the students and be able to have them understand kind of what the best option is for them. So with that, I am going to stop. I think Karen is going to join us. I am going to stop sharing the screen so you can see us all. And we'll be happy to answer some questions.
Great, good timing. So you've had some great questions, parents. Let's see what we can get to. I think we've addressed some of them. A number of folks were asking around, does my student's merit award scholarship follow? And Mark, I believe if I understood you correctly, it certainly does, right? AU scholarships apply for AU abroad, right?
Absolutely. Any student who studies abroad through our office on an AU abroad program, all of their scholarships and financial aid, apart from work study, will apply to their study abroad. In addition, if they choose a program which costs more than the cost of attendance at AU and they qualify for additional financial aid, they may get it. So they're then, once they choose the program they're going on, they do have to engage in a discussion also with the financial aid office with their budget for studying abroad to see if they may qualify for additional aid.
Great. Sarah, this one might come back at you again. So we talked about how we've got some programs where the students are matriculating as if they're just an international student in country. Some are through AU programs where we're sort of controlling the course catalog, and others are kind of in between. To me, this sounds like this is the obvious reason why students need to start with an advising appointment, right?
Absolutely.
And those advising appointments, students can book them themselves. It looks like the link is available on the website, which I have shared in the chat. So that's auabroad.american.edu. And in that first box, parents, if you pull that up, you're going to see like the very first thing says schedule an advising appointment. And so as I've worked with your team of advisors, it sounds to me too like the parents have questions about the specific kind of courses that a student might be able to tap into. Those are really going to be worked through with the advisor, right?
Yeah, I mean, the students can do a lot of this homework themselves, especially along with their academic advisor. I mean, our website has a bewildering amount of information contained in it, and I know it can seem a bit daunting to navigate it, but we do have a search function. So for example, if you're a psychology student, you can actually go on the website and search for all of our programs and partners that offer courses in psychology. And then you can look on each individual website. If it's a partner university, you can actually go on there and see all of the courses they offer in psychology. We also have a database of all of the courses that our students have taken abroad at our partners and how they equate to AU courses and count towards AU requirements. This is an important thing for everyone to know, is that when students study abroad at AU, they are paying AU tuition. This means that every course they take abroad, whether it's at one of our centers or one of our partners, is equated in the AU system, and they get full letter grade AU credit. It is not transfer credit. It's considered like residence credit. This is an integral part of their degree. So every time a student takes a course abroad at one of our partners that no one else has taken before, we find the syllabus, the student gets the syllabus for that course. It's submitted through an online system now to a designated faculty reviewer in the appropriate academic department, who then equates that course in the AU system, saying either this course is exactly like one we teach, and it will be given that number, or we don't teach anything quite like it, but it's, an upper level course in psychology, and we'll let it count towards the major or minor. So it is a very intensive system, and all that information is there for people to look at. Every AU person has access to that course approval database. We do understand it's a lot of information, and it often needs help in navigating through it. So initially, the students should be talking to their academic advisors so they know what they absolutely need to take when they go abroad. Not just what they want, but what they need, and then also what they want. Then, when they've hopefully attended one of our general information sessions, maybe been to the Study Abroad Fair, and they know basically how Study Abroad works, they make an appointment with one of our advisors in AU Abroad. We've kind of carved up the world, and so each of our advisors is responsible for working with our programs and partners in particular countries. And so if a student doesn't know if they want to go to Asia or Europe, they may end up talking to more than one advisor to investigate these programs. That's fine. That's fine. We're fortunate at AU in having a really pretty large staff in study abroad world terms, and we are able to give every student individual personal advising to whatever extent they need to make sure that they're matched up with the right program. And there's never just one right program for any student. So if they pick a program and really, because that one is a very expensive program and out of their reach, you know what, there's going to be another one that can give them what they need and will still give them a wonderful, amazing experience abroad. So we also say to students, don't get your heart set on just one thing before you even investigated everything, because every one of our 130 odd programs is amazing.
Well, you know, Sarah, you really set me up for one of my next questions. I know I've got a lot of anxious parents of rising seniors who have been watching sort of the clock tick on their opportunities to study abroad. So they don't have a lot of options left if they're going to graduate on time. What are we doing to help support those seniors in their efforts to study abroad?
Oh gosh, you know, we are so cognizant of the seniors and also some of the students in the 3-year programs who were supposed to go abroad last fall, and then they were supposed to go abroad this fall, and they're still not, you know, going anywhere. And we really, I mean, our hearts just bleed for all of this. So we've been working very intensively with the academic advising units and making it clear that we're going to be a lot more flexible in terms of what students do when they go abroad. So for example, normally we wouldn't say to students, you know, you go abroad, you have to fully engage, take all your courses there. Well, if they really need something and they need to take it online back here at AU, and the department here will let them do it online, we'll make an exception and we'll work with the academic programming to make sure they get all the courses they need. And also we'll work with each student so that if they've, you know, for example, if someone had their heart set on going to Australia and you know what, this fall it's not going to be possible, we'll find something else for them. We'll work with them. So they should just get in touch with their advisor, start working with us, and we will turn ourselves inside out. There, I have to say, there may be cases where it's just not possible. If someone has very, very specific requirements. But overall, I think we'll be able to work with everybody as long as they can be a bit flexible. We'll be as creative and flexible as we can. And I know all the academic units are also prepared to work with our students and make sure that they get this experience, because it's very much a part of an AU degree. As I said, most of our students do it. And these poor students have been planning on it. They've been so terrific about rolling with all these punches that we're going to do our utmost to make sure they get an experience abroad.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that too, because I know I speak to a lot of students like this in this position who are desperate to kind of have this experience, especially since it's been deferred 1 semester, 2 semesters. So the other thing to kind of put students and parents' minds at ease is that we will not have a huge number of students abroad in the fall semester.
Yeah.
Given that all the uncertainties are there, we're about a half the number of students normally who are looking to go abroad for the fall semester. So we're not running into capacity issues. We're not running into issues of places being closed off because there's not capacity to support them. There will be. So the opportunities are there. Some spaces may be kind of limited or some countries may be restricted, but we absolutely will be flexible in allowing backup options and other ways to look forward. And we still have plenty of time for students to kind of look at other options if they think what they might want to do now might not be possible for the fall. So we will definitely work with them on that, and they'll definitely find a pathway for them to go forward.
And I have to say, for those who do go abroad in the fall, all of our partners and programs abroad have so missed having our students. They're just desperate. They're as desperate to have our students as the students are as desperate to go. I think for those who do go abroad in the fall, they're going to be made to feel so unbelievably welcomed and having, you know, red carpets laid out for them, because everyone's going to be so happy to see them. So I don't think that students should feel hesitant about, you know, if they're forced into changing the specific location of where they study abroad. They need to know that wherever they go, they're going to be welcomed with such open arms.
Thank you so much for that. I've had some questions coming in from parents who are looking for how they can access those budget sheets and the fact sheets. I know it can be a little bit tricky because your eyes don't know where to land on the AU Abroad website. There's so much valuable information there. Families, if you open the AU Abroad website, there's a top navigation bar, and the top one, the first one on the left next to the home button says programs, and you can drill down, but there's definitely budget sheets and fact sheets for each of them, unless you're going to correct me, team. But that's where I always find them. There were some other questions. You know, I think a lot of our families are very fluent in the kinds of support services that we have for students on campus, whether it's academic support services or even the help to arrange for on or off campus housing. How does that work overseas? What kind of support services should be expected? And in particular, if a program says students are on their own to find housing, like how do we help them find that housing?
Well, nowhere are they completely on their own to find housing. The difference is if they go to one of our partner universities, they're entering into that university's housing system. So often those are entirely separate offices from, say, the international office, and they'll have their own deadlines, which are very strict. And students really need to pay attention to that once they get the information about how to apply for their own housing. And they may or may not have a lot of choice with that. So it really varies. If they're on one of our programs at one of our centers, we take care of the housing for them, either in a homestay, if it's with Brussels or Madrid, or in an apartment when it's Nairobi. With all the other partners, we have other structured programs that are run by program providers, which again arrange the housing for students. But each program will have its own arrangements, and once the student is admitted, they'll get information about what they need to do. They do need to pay attention if there's a separate application for housing and a deadline. They really need to pay attention to that. There are times when students haven't paid attention to that and they don't apply for housing by the deadline, and then they're stuck, and that is unhappy for everybody. So we do try to remind everybody that once you're entering into another university system, you've got to comply with that system. In the same way, our exchange students who come to us at AU have to do it with us. And if they miss AU's housing deadline, you know what? They come to DC, they don't have anywhere to live. So, you know, it works both ways. But we do try to keep up with students and remind them they've got a lot on their minds all the time, especially you know, they're usually doing this at the end of a semester and things can fall through the cracks. So we do try and send a lot of reminders, and that's also part of our pre-departure orientation sessions where we're reminding students of everything they still need to do to get themselves abroad. And if anyone is in serious trouble, we help as much as we can.
Excellent. Matt, I'm going to go back to you for a second. You had so much information, and sometimes the security stuff is just really hard to like follow along with. You were talking about an app to get travel alerts. Can you just kind of remind us of the details of that? Can parents access this app?
It's Alert Traveler. You would register. When you register through the program, you'll be able to you'll be able to get the information. We'll download it through the Teradata. It's owned by Teradata. It's a separate entity of Teradata, which is our database that we use. Most of the programs use, and then you download it to your phone, and then you turn your GPS on the phone. In terms of parents, I don't believe parents have access to it. I'd have to get back to you on that. We can probably talk to AU Abroad's Teradata person to find that out. I don't know, Mark, do you know if the parents can access it?
No, the parents can't access it. Obviously, there are privacy issues around this. So they can, though. We do have we can send a link where they can see what the app is and what it does. The parents can actually download the app themselves if they want information about the location where the kids, their children are going, but they would not be able to access it to say track the students or know exactly what their movements are. There's obviously considerations around that of privacy and FERPA that would not allow us to do that.
Yeah, actually, only very few people at AU are allowed to track where the students are, and I'm not one of those, for example. But I will say I have the Alert Traveler app myself, and it's great. You know, because when you're traveling, it will tell you things about, you know, even traffic jams and other things like, or a flu outbreak somewhere or whatever. And I've used it when I've traveled. It's very handy.
And just to like also put to mind these, like we put all that capability there, but we are not requiring the students to be tracked. I mean, that when I kind of put everybody's ease there, there's always the option to opt out of the tracking. We try to encourage and understand, like explain the benefits of it, that it's there to help students. We're not there to try to track where they go or how they spend their time or days. It's there to help them in an emergency. And if we know where they are in an emergency and we can communicate with them, we can help them. If we don't, we can't. So that's how we kind of position it to them. But obviously they're in control of how they use that system, how they decide to whether to share the information or not. But we try to build in and explain the benefits of it and make it as easy as possible for them to use it.
Yep.
Yeah, registering is the requirement. Tracking is they have to turn it on.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It
Thanks.
does have one override, so that if there's a serious emergency, we can push out a message to every student that registered, just say, are you okay and do you need help? We may not know exactly even where they are, but we have them all in the system. So for example, years ago when there was a terrorist attack in Paris, we were able to push out this message, just, are you okay? Do you need help? And they can answer that, and we don't need to know exactly where they are for us to at least be able to check in with them in an emergency.
Now there is a system on DC's campus where students and parents, you can register as a guest through the RAVE system, but that's just, it's isolated to the DC.
Yep.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. So I'm cognizant of our time and families. We're about at the end of it. I'm going to put my email address again in the chat box here, auparent@american.edu, if we didn't get to your questions, because some of them just came in fast and furious at the end. I'm a very fast typer, but not that fast. I want to point out again that on the AU Abroad website, some of you had questions about, how do I know if my students can be able to satisfy the graduation requirements with this? That there is a handy tab that says my major in study abroad, and it's going to offer some great guidance. And then of course your student is going to set up their appointment to meet with an AU Abroad advisor, and they can walk through some of this. And I will also say, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of the best next steps for your student to do, aside from that advisor appointment, is to go ahead and plan on filling out an application for the program that they're interested in. That is the best way for this team to know how to stay in touch with your student about the updates that are relevant to that specific program. So all the things about any pre-departure COVID prep that you need or vaccinations, that's all going to come through that application process. So please don't have your student delay. Go ahead and have them work through that application.
And just one last point, Karen, before we kind of sign off, is that please understand, especially on issues of safety, security, and health, and any concerns about there, we are happy to talk to parents. We want to put everybody's mind at ease. We want open communication. Obviously, on planning the program, we want to talk to the students directly so they are bought into this process. But if there are concerns about health, safety, security, about where they're going, how they're supported there, the issues in a specific country, any of us, including Matt, are very happy to speak to you and talk about what we're doing, how we're handling it, and what we see what the problems could be.
Yeah, I just want to add the same, and I'm always happy to talk to parents. My email is simply my last name, dumont@american.edu. Please feel free to contact me. And in terms of worrying about your students staying on track for graduation, we have this fail-safe, which is the student's academic advisor in their major or majors must sign off on their plan to study abroad. This means that students generally, in very rare occasions, a student might get off track for graduation because of studying abroad. They really have to work at it and do everything they're told not to do and disobey everything that they signed off on and said they would do and that their academic advisor. It was really hard work for them not to stay on track for graduation when they study abroad, because without those advisors' approvals, they don't go. That's just a rule. So I really don't think you need to worry about that very much. We have all kinds of things built in. There's an enormous system and collaborative work across all the units of AU, because this is considered an integral part of an AU education. It's not an add-on. It's not just something they do for enrichment. This is a crucial part of their education, and everybody at AU works hard to make it so.
Well, team, if you ever need a volunteer to go check in on the students on behalf of the families, I'll dust off my passport and sign up. With that, thanks again to such a great team, and thanks to you parents for all your really great questions. Look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Take care and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all.